Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Michaela Peters. It's really weird recording this video because this is the only one I've done where my hair's back and I'm like, who is this? Okay, anyway, so today I want to talk about some kind of almost weird social things about me growing up that now that I know I have autism, it kind of makes a bit more sense. Because maybe I think that by sharing my experience, it will help other people who are, I don't know, if you are searching for a diagnosis. Honestly, there's not a lot you can do about being autistic besides forcing yourself to be in social situations, which can be pretty yikes. I understand that. But I just started thinking about all these things that seem really weird, and I'm like, maybe this is where it comes from. And I think in terms of explaining this, it's going to make a lot of sense why I chose to study a language like Russian and end up in a country like Finland, because instead of these things being considered socially abnormal, whereas they would be in a US context, they aren't really in a Finnish or a Russian context. Like smiling at random people out of politeness, which I just always had a hard time doing. So I grew up going to a beach club. Very nice. Where there's like a pool and a beach and stuff. And I used to walk back and forth between the pool and the beach. And there would always be like this one older gentleman who would be like, "You would be prettier if you smiled more." And I was just like, why am I supposed to just walk around smiling? Like, that doesn't feel right. And it's like, yes, I can show genuine excitement and happiness and smile, but I don't really feel comfortable doing that with like random people. So, yeah, which is actually like very culturally normal in Russian culture, but in US culture, it's like you have to be like fake smile, which just feels really forced, and I don't like that. So, yeah, that's one kind of thing. And again, like in New Jersey, you can get away with that a little bit less, which is one of the things I like about New Jersey, but in general, not a thing. Okay. And then the idea of small talk, which again, Finnish people don't do. So it's kind of sort of funny because sometimes I sit here and I just think about these are things that are expected in American culture, and like you're kind of left out if you don't do these things. Meanwhile, if you're in a place like Finland and you just behave this way, it's considered normal. So it's very interesting that way. Um, yeah, but like small talk, and there were all these jokes during the pandemic, like social distancing is closer than we normally stand to each other, so why would we want to do that, like at the bus stop and stuff? And I've heard Finnish people even explain that, like, they will wait until the elevator goes down and comes back up for them before they get into an elevator with somebody they don't really know. Like, just the level of, like, wanting to be away from people. It's interesting. And I think it makes a lot of sense why a place like Finland is so comfortable for me, because it's very understimulating. Like, there just aren't a lot of people around, and I feel calm. When there are a lot of people around, it just feels like it takes a lot of extra energy for me to, like, block all of the energy or something, just, like, from the crowd of people I'm in. And there can be other reasons for this, like, just being more introverted and stuff like that, but that is something that, maybe causes me a degree of distress. But there were other certain things, and now that I think back to like the video that I made on point of view why dating games make no sense to me, now this makes even more sense why they make no sense to me. But there were certain things like, and this still happens to me, where somebody's like, "I like you," and then I'm like, "I don't like you." Okay, it doesn't quite go like that, but something like that. And then this is perceived as something like playing hard to get, when in reality I'm just being direct and I'm saying no. And then sometimes if I start getting really angry, I will just block the person. Which normally I'm not big on blocking people, but like sometimes it's like very random people. So yes, while I'm flattered, and sometimes I try to use that approach, like I am flattered, but no thank you, and then it still creates issues. So that's one thing. And I remember very specifically growing up, there were a couple times where like some random kid who I thought I was friends with would be like, "I like you," and then I was just kind of like, this actually happened twice in my life, and I just sit there and I'm like, I kind of freeze, and then they're like, "Did you hear me?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I was like, I just have no idea how to respond. So stuff like that, I'm just like, what do I do with this? And then I think I started, like, so I moved once between Maryland and New Jersey when I was like 8 years old or something, like between like I think I was going into fourth grade. And then the very first two people I sat next to were both boys. So I became friends with them. But then they ended up having crushes on me, and then I was like, well, what do I do with this? And so I think that probably created in me like sort of like a mistrust of being friends with guys, because I'm like, every guy like is gonna have a crush on me, and then they tell me they like me and I like don't know what to do with it, and I'm like, this is awkward. And I just like wanted to avoid that situation because I just didn't know how to manage it. And then this led to me having only girlfriends in high school, where it was like I literally had like a group of like 10 female friends, and that was it. And I like did not interact with boys at all. I probably didn't really start interacting with boys until like this sounds so weird, but until like college, and especially when I was at Rutgers, because I was like needing help with assignments, and it seemed easier to elicit help, particularly in programming, from men than from women, because no offense, and this is a gender thing, but it just seems like there are more men who are in technical professions than women. That's not a surprise, but yeah. So anyway, there's that, and then when I was at NASA, then at an engineering university, and so yeah, I'm kind of like, why do I get along? It's not even better with guys, but I guess just like direct other autistic people. And now I'm starting to wonder, is autism more prevalent in men? Or, yeah, and this is a lot of research I still have to do because I don't understand this that much at all. But yeah, so I had like only 10 girlfriends I would hang out with because I was almost like afraid of men at this point, or just like didn't know what to do with them. And a very funny thing I always think of in high school was like I ran cross country, and so it's like you run like a 5K, 3 miles, whatever. And I was running past the baseball fields one day, and this one guy who I ran cross country with, like, the guy playing baseball had asked him like, "Oh, who's that?" as I ran by, and he just goes, "Don't even bother." And honestly, I think this is so hilarious because that just shows like, it's like, just don't even talk to her. He's not going to talk to you. And yeah, I just like tried to keep as low of a profile as I possibly could. But like, people always paid attention to me because of what I look like. And so they'd always be like, I had like one guy come up to me on like the last day of school. I think I was a junior and he was a senior. So it was like, 1 grade difference, his last day of school. And he's like, "You're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen." And I was just like, thank you. It was like in front of a bunch of my friends. So I don't know, just like all these situations, I was just like, they're so like weird to me, and it was like really hard for me to make friends, especially when I moved the first time, and then I finally made some friends in high school, and I kept really closely to those friends, and we were all really nerdy, and we would like do our math homework together, and that worked for me. And now I'm secretly sitting here wondering like how many of my own friends are autistic and just don't know it. It's a good question, and maybe I will never know the answer to it, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So, other things are like touching people. So I will always like sort of wait and see if people are going to give me a hug first, because I don't necessarily feel the need to like go hug people. Although I am pretty affectionate with my family, and especially with like small creatures like my dogs and my little sister. And well, she's not that small anymore, but when she was small, like small things because they're cute. I don't know. And then like with my mom's family, because they're of Italian descent, it's also very weird where it's like my grandmother will just like kiss me on the lips, and I guess that's culturally like normal for them, maybe. But I have to go up and hug and kiss every single, not like that, I can just kiss them on the cheek or something, every single member of my family every time I go to a family gathering. And I remember when I was a teenager, I like started really hating this, and I was like, I don't want to do this. And then my mom was like, you have to because you're Italian and blah blah blah, and it was very annoying. And then like, but now looking back, like, why was this so uncomfortable for me? And I'm like, maybe there's correlation. So I'm trying to think what other things were really weird for me besides like trying to make friends, trying to figure out like how to behave in different social situations. Like I found that I would say things that would really like upset people or offend people, or like I was just trying really hard to behave the way I was supposed to behave, but it took so much effort to figure that out. And especially in different like community group settings, and I don't know, especially like I would try to get myself to go to like parties and stuff. And I remember I'd feel like really proud of myself that I made myself go, but feel so drained. And so, like, what was the point of doing that? And I think it wasn't, again, until I got to these other environments where it felt like people's brains worked more similarly to mine, like in the more engineering type of environments, where I was like, okay, wow, like, I don't feel so weird anymore. And actually, like, in those environments, I am pretty popular and have a lot of friends. So people from those situations will be like, oh yeah, like Michaela's so popular and she has so many friends. And yeah, that's just not the case in like the rest of my real life. So yeah. But yeah, figuring out like how to act socially has always been really confusing for me, and trying to make sure I'm saying the right thing and not like offending people. And yeah, it's just hard. I don't know. And so I feel like that led to a lot of me maybe isolating myself unintentionally, because it felt like I couldn't like interact properly with people like the way I was expected to. So, and to be honest, that's probably something I still struggle with a little bit. Yes. So actually, this is what I was going to say about this. There was a video I was watching that was talking about like autistic people, and how if you find somebody you connect with really well, it's probably like they're another autistic person, and the conversation just flows. And sometimes I wonder how much of this is overlap with ADHD, where you just kind of keep going back and forth like a ping pong match, and then yeah, that was an ADHD moment. Now I'm trying to remember what I was saying. Oh yes, so maybe this comes from like a discomfort with sometimes I feel like people are prying, but I feel like I still have to answer the questions, if I don't want to, and now I'm trying to get better at this. But I would not always like to ask people like a lot of what I call invasive questions. Like for some reason I always like didn't like the idea of like in America you just go and ask people what they do for work, because I was like, well, you're making an assumption based on what the person does, like how much money they make and whether it's a good job. So like I feel like it's kind of rude, even though that's like how people talk to each other here. But I always just felt like questions were super invasive, and I always followed the model of I just like to start volunteering random information and then try to get the other person to volunteer random information. Then you're like, having a discussion about the things you feel comfortable sharing rather than asking questions. Or I try to ask I guess the way I always thought of it, I was going to say non-specific questions, but I'm not really sure that's true. I guess it's sort of like I would always think it's easy for me to go talk to somebody if I need information, or like I need help or something, and I'm like fine with doing that. I feel like people oftentimes are willing to help out, unless you're in Europe for some reason. Now, Finnish people are helpful, but like in Italy, nope, not helpful. Sorry. Italian people are like actually not helpful in my opinion. So yeah, there's that. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, having conversations can be hard. I do like try to ask polite questions, and it sort of became like my family taught me that like you should always be polite and say hello, how are you to everybody. So at the restaurant, I try to do that, but then beyond that, sometimes I like just don't know what to talk to people about. Besides the when you first meet them, it's like hello, how are you? Where are you from? Where do you live? Like what town are you in? Like oh that's a long commute. Like are you still in school? Like do you do anything else? Are you a teacher? Like that kind of stuff. But then once I already know those things, I'm sort of like I don't know what to talk about with you. So, I don't know. Yeah, and now it's really funny too because there are people who are being like, yeah, I knew you were autistic. And I'm like, why did nobody ever tell me? One of my best friends, though, when I told her I was going to get the neuropsych eval, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to find out what's going on with my brain. And then she's like, are they going to tell you you're autistic? Come on, I've always known you're autistic. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe. And then that's what happened. Okay, so yeah. So I guess that's a little bit on like how I've communicated growing up and just the way that all this stuff kind of works for me, and maybe it gives some perspective, some clarity from somebody's point of view who has it, especially from a girl. And I think because I'm a girl, sometimes I'm more they say girls are more adept and better at masking, so I'm not sure everybody thinks this about me. Because I remember I was starting to suspect I had autism, and I would tell people like, oh, I probably have autism too. And then they're like, no, you don't. And I'm like, I don't actually know. And now I do actually know. So that's that. All right. Well, that's everything that I have for today. And yeah, we'll see what's going to go on with me continuing to make videos or not, because I need to start my research for my PhD. So pretty yikes. All right. Until my next video. Bye.